disparity found in so many other reports. This is something that we all know, but since we are just days away from Father's Day, and due to recent events where lives of our Black men seem to be undervalued by others, we wanted to take an opportunity to honor our Black fathers with a special edition here on Dear Sister. So I have joining us currently, let me see if I can unmute them. Yes, joining us, we have a couple of our guests. One is being super dad right now. He's at the golf field.
He's driving.
He's driving. Oh my gosh.
I don't know if we should tell people that part.
Hello, now, Mumford.
I'm so sorry. I'm just trying to be the best dad in the world, you know? Be good in a few seconds. I'm gonna pull over in a few seconds, okay, guys? I want to be a good example for everybody.
Well, good. We'll go ahead and start with Dr. Glenn then. Dr. Glenn, thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you. Yes, glad to be here.
Thank you. Well, I'll share a little bit with our audience about who you are. Dr. Glenn is a psychiatrist here in the Metro Jackson area. He is principal owner of Rehoboth Psychiatry Services here in Ridgeland. And he is, to tell you a little bit more about him, he is a graduate of Alcorn State University, as well as... Yeah, no praise. He earned his medical degree from the University of Iowa College of Medicine. He also completed his psychiatry residency at the Ohio State University Hospitals. He's a member of several professional and civic organizations. I won't even start with those. It's a very long list. Also, I forgot to mention that he's from Cleveland, Mississippi. He still does work back in his hometown through a nonprofit that his brothers and sisters founded in dedication to their parents, the William and Essie Glenn Foundation. He's very proud of that, I do know. But one of the things that he is also most proud of is he is the father of four. He has 3 sons and 1 daughter, kind of how I grew up with 3 brothers. And so he is joining us not just as someone who gives a perspective on being a medical professional, but also someone who is a father and a Black man. So, Dr. Glenn, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks for joining us, Dr. Glenn.
You're welcome. Good to see you again.
Also joining us at a later date is Pastor Willie Tobias. He'll be joining us, and I'll introduce him, or Kamesha will, at a later time. All yours, Kamesha.
Well, I take great pleasure in introducing our next guest, who I hope has finally pulled over. And none other than my husband, Mr. Gerald Mumford. He's an attorney. He is also the Hinds County prosecuting attorney. He's held that position since 2017 is when he was first elected. He is my law partner as well at Mumford & Mumford Law Firm, where we specialize in real estate and premises liability, personal injury matters. He's the father of 2 children, Garrison, who's 7, and Gianna Adele, who will be 3 next month and rules the roost. Theresa is a native of Jackson, Mississippi, by way of Clarksdale, Mississippi. He was born in Clarksdale, but moved here to Jackson when he was very young. So he went to school. I hear him always talking about Green Elementary and, of course, Callaway High School. He also went to University of Southern Mississippi, where he received his undergraduate and graduate degree, and then went on to Mississippi College School of Law, which is where we met.
Wow, Kamesha, I'm going to have to pay you for that introduction. She set you up just right, Brother Mumford.
All right. Well, we are going to go ahead and move the show along. You heard the opening about the reports and what the misconception there is about Black fathers. But there are reports that are out here to support otherwise. And so I guess we'll go ahead and get into some of the questions. I'll let Kamesha start. She had a lot of them, and I'll just fill in wherever I need to.
Well, I thought it was good as we talk about, we're leading up to Father's Day. And I think it would be good for us to start the discussion about, your parenting style as a father, as opposed to some of the things that your father did as you were a child. So how do each of you think that your current parenting style is different from that of your father's style?
Since the green light is on my head, I'll just start with saying that I'm way more patient and understanding than my father was. As my son prepares to go play baseball today, we were driving over here to go to play baseball. I can remember him being quite stern on us, and we turned out okay. But I think these children today may need a little more talking to. They're much more advanced than we were. So I believe that talking to them and not fussing at them all the time is a good way to start. And I think that's a big difference from my upbringing. Although I love my father, and happy Father's Day, Alexander Mumford. And I'm so glad he was a part of my life coming up, because he's made me the man that I am, along with my mother.
All right.
Liam?
Okay, I guess I'm up. Let me first of all say thank you all for having me. I'm very excited to be a part of this podcast this afternoon. If I may, before I talk about parenting styles, I just want to comment on the information that you shared earlier regarding studies that have shown that African American fathers are much more involved with their children than the images we typically see in various media sources, as well as, even among ourselves in terms of our conversation and how we perceive African American men as being involved with their children. So that was some very encouraging information, and shows the importance of us not letting others define who we are, but we define that for ourselves. As far as parenting styles are concerned, I think I would say that I pretty closely approximate my own father. He was kind of an easygoing, laid-back kind of guy, sort of quiet when he needed to be, but could be right there in the space holding up seriously when he needed to be as well. He was a soft-spoken man, not one who was very loud, but was quite respected in our household. So I think I tend to have some of the same demeanor, and I would say that my children would say the same.
And piggybacking off of that, we've been seeing and hearing about, especially in current times, how most Black people are talking about when they are giving their children this talk about how to conduct themselves when they are stopped by police or law enforcement officers. Do each of you remember about when your parent gave you that talk? And when did you give it to your children, or when do you plan to give it to your children?
Well, I'm probably a little older than Attorney Mumford, so I would say that I was pretty young. I can't remember the exact age, but growing up in Cleveland, Mississippi, in the early, late 60s, early 70s, that we were on the heels of the civil rights movement at that particular time. There was still a lot of racial tensions in Mississippi, and overtly more so than I guess in some cases today. So very early on, you kind of learn what the quote unquote social boundaries are, and there was always a very physical boundary in our town to reinforce, the fact that there was some differences in our communities. There was a railroad track that ran down the middle of town, separated the white side of town from the black side of town. You don't go over that side of town. You don't get caught on that side of town at night. I mean, these were conversations that were being had very early on in my household. And I'm from a household of 11 children, and I'm number 10. So you can imagine my mother and father had plenty of practice in terms of, sort of, I guess, emphasizing what are the social rules, if you will, growing up in a southern Black town. So I heard those conversations very early on. In regards to and it wasn't so much about police interaction as it was community interaction, because you know at that particular time you just never knew who was about what when it came to black and white interaction, I guess, in that sense. As a parent, I really did not start having those conversations until, with directly, I guess you could say, and more overtly with my children, until we started to see these murders taking place and they were being aired on television. And, so it brought up conversation among us in the household. And we started to talk about, what those kind of situations meant and the potential risks that are still out there for all of us. So, you're on the one hand, you're having the conversation trying to protect your children. On the other hand, I'm a black man too. So, I'm sort of having this conversation with myself as well. But it's been several years that we've had direct talks. And I would say that they're ongoing talks because we're still seeing these issues and situations come about. Just yesterday, I sent a text out to my children in regards to using Siri on their iPhones in case they're stopped by a police officer. Have Siri record what's going on. So if something happens, we have some type of evidence to fall back on.
Mr. Mumford, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Oh, sure. I would like to add that because my mother was a part of the court system, I was constantly reminded about a lot of the mistakes people have made. She told us very early on to not argue with the police, just get home. And that's what I plan to tell my children. I plan to sit down with my son especially and watch these movies and watch the matter that happened with George Floyd. He knows about it now. But there are all kind of movies. There are things like When They See Us, the matter involving the Central Park 5. That kind of thing sends chills up my spine. Son, if you arrested, don't talk to the police. And I'm a prosecutor, but everybody has their constitutional rights. But what you saw in that movie is something that's very real, and it's something that we can experience today. And that was such a tragedy. And so we're going to have these conversations. We're going to have the conversations that, look, do not get into a court battle on the side of the road. All I want you to do is get home. If you get a ticket, say yes, sir, no, sir. If you get stopped, make sure your hands are at the 10 and 3 o'clock level. Don't say yes, sir, and no, sir, because I want my children to come home. And that's when I talk to other children in my mentoring. My thing is just get home. Don't tell these folks how much law you know. They're not interested. They're in going home. Families. There's apprehension from police officers, and there's certainly apprehension when you see those blue lights. There's no ticket that you need to be worried about so much that it should not bring you home. And that's what I encourage people to do. I encourage my children. I will encourage them, and I encourage other young people to just make it home. This ticket, if it's bad, it'll get thrown out by the judge. So I had that conversation very early on, traveling back and forth to Hattiesburg. I don't know how I wasn't stopped going the race I was going, but I'm thankful that I was able to make it through there and be here today because I've had my interactions with police and we've made it through.
But your comments though bring another element into focus as well, and that is even though we tell our children, and we're thinking of this ourselves undoubtedly as Black men, that we're not trying to have any confrontation, we're not trying to provoke anything if we have encounters with the authorities in any way. But the problem that we're seeing in society is that you have people they got their hands up at 10 and 2. They're not resisting and literally pleading for their lives, and it's almost as if the instruction to follow those norms, as you pointed out, don't matter. What do we do with that? That's another dynamic that's thrown into the equation here, in the sense that people are not necessarily being confrontational with police officers, and still they potentially lose their lives.
Oh, absolutely, Dr. Glenn. You brought up another point. I was going to say, Kamesha mentioned the talk with your sons, but I nowadays we even have to talk with our daughters. I think I've been stopped and definitely had some things happen that were questionable. But I will never forget, years ago, Chief Vance said something to me that made all the sense. And he said, you won't win on the side of the road with the police. Don't try, like Daryl said, has already alluded to, don't try to hold court on the side of the road. Just accept the ticket. And that was really profound for me, in terms of get the ticket and like y'all both have said, get home. That's the goal, to get home. But like Dr. Glenn has said, it's very unfortunate that oftentimes we've seen, and all the videos that have been released now, and we've gotten a chance to witness these things taking place, is some of these people were very compliant. I think of Fidel Castile, who was very compliant. He was legally carrying a firearm, and life was taken, right in front of his wife and children. So, the thought of that just really puts things in, and gives, I believe, a lot of people the nervousness that it shouldn't exist, but it does exist. And at the end of the day, we want everyone to be safe, and we want everyone to respect authority. It just definitely changes the scenario now of the idea of being stopped. And when you see those blue lights, it definitely gives us a sense of anxiety. I know, Clyde, Dr. Glenn, your children are much older than Daryl's, Attorney Mumford's kids.
Much older.
And so, we got, and I'm glad we got someone who has adult children and someone who has toddlers almost, young people. So, I don't know, but you happen to have the same conversation that your parents had to have with you. And that, I find that very interesting. Years ago, Dr. Glenn, the conversation your parents have had with you is a conversation that, Kamesha and Daryl have find themselves having will possibly have with their children, in the next 5 years, I imagine. Do y'all see anything changing, or the conversation changing, or you think it'll always be the same in terms of what your parents told you and what you told your children, Dr. Glenn, who are much older?
Well, I certainly hope that at some point, there will not be a need to have these type of conversations. But I think that's, dependent to a great degree on the type of police officers that are hired on these various forces, and and whether or not the training that they receive is adequate and culturally sensitive. If these individuals can be better screened out, I think those arguments are certainly being had today in terms of, do we need better training, or do we need better screening of individuals? What exactly is needed and necessary to somehow better filter out these particular officers who are likely to use force as opposed to, other means and that are available to them. So I can only hope and pray that things will in fact change in that regard. One encouraging sign is that at least in society today, there seems to be a massive outcry, both black, white, brown, and red, as well as male and female, not only here in the United States, but around the world, for these type of injustices and particularly targeting of African Americans or people of African descent, comes to a halt. So that's encouraging in and of itself. But I would say that there is always going to be the likelihood that, someone will take advantage of the position of authority that they have and use that in a way that leads to harm for some African American individuals.
I'll piggyback on what Dr. Glenn said. I certainly believe that we'll be facing this in the next 20 years, but I'm so happy about society becoming aware of everything that's going on. People are feeling your plight. Even Aunt Jemima is about to leave us pretty soon. I didn't realize that label had been around for 130 years. It certainly goes back to slavery. So I still think we'll be dealing with this 30 years from now, but I'm happy that these college players are having a voice. This week we saw Oklahoma State's football player tell his coach that, look, the wearing of that shirt you have is totally unacceptable. So we are being empowered by acts like George Floyd and the murder over in Atlanta. That's what these things are. These are murders, and I think that these people will be brought to justice. I believe that there's a public outcry. I believe Congress today has passed a bill. I think the Senate, that is the majority Republican, has tried to do something with regard to police reform and no-knock warrant. So these things are going all the way to Washington, and so I think things will change, society will change, but we'll still be dealing with this when my son is my age.
Yeah, I think it's important to have laws on the book that certainly provide protections, but there also has to be some change of heart. As well,
absolutely.
I think racism sort of comes from the core of an individual, and it's deeply seated, ingrained in the personality. So unless something changes that, you still have risk, unfortunately.
It was really encouraging to see. I saw several Facebook posts about where white mothers were stopping every time they saw a black male pulled over by a police officer.
Wow.
And I think that kind of goes to what you were saying, Dr. Glenn, when there was a change of hearts of other people. She said, I will wait here with your son, black mother, whoever you are, every time I see a black male stopped on the side of a road with a police officer. Because my presence there is going to force them to make better decisions on how they treat these men.
Absolutely.
That is true.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Glenn, you said something about hate. I believe that hate, and I think we all could agree to this, that hate is a learned behavior and that racism is something that's taught. I remember when my oldest nephew, who's now 22, was maybe about 8 or 9 years old. My parents were taking him back to his mom's house one Sunday, and they stopped at a Walmart down in Loosedale. And my mom was already in Walmart. My dad had let my nephew go in to use the bathroom, and he came back outside running, crying. And my dad was like, "What's wrong?" And he said, this boy and his dad came in the bathroom, and the little boy said, "Hey, look at that N-word." And my nephew just was offended. Even at that young age, he was offended. And that was his first time ever witnessing or doing something like, hearing that. He knew that word was not a good word. And my dad was so livid. My mom had to calm him down because he was ready to see some bloodshed. With our kids having and seeing things like this at such a young age, I imagine now it's really the conversation I've heard Attorney Gerald say, Attorney Mumford say, that he, in a few years, he's going to have this conversation, to talk about driving. But it seems like now you would start having these talks at even a child as young as 8 or 9. I guess my parents must have thought they had time to talk to him about racism and people judging him by the color of his skin. I guess my question is, for you, Dr. Glenn, do you see people as young? I know you do some adolescent psychiatry. Do you see young people inside your practice who may have had dealt with racism in any type of way, and how did you handle that?
Well, I've definitely seen young people who have encountered racial issues. I wouldn't say so much at the middle school, elementary, middle school level, but certainly high school and in college. Those reports are a little bit more common among younger people. Typically, I'm not seeing them because of just the racial issue, but it may be something that come up in conversation, just through historical discussions in terms of things that they've encountered and what they may have gone through. Believe it or not, there are a lot of adults that I see who encounter racial issues on their jobs, frequently are, depressed or suffering anxieties because they're still having to try and function on that job and do what's expected of them as far as the job is concerned. But at the same time, you're dealing with these racial undertones and issues that make doing the job that much more difficult for one to do, in addition to worrying about safety and things of that sort. So adults are much more likely to talk about than are younger individuals who may be experiencing some racial issues as well. And sometimes, younger people may not necessarily recognize it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? They may not have fully formalized that, hey, this is a clear racial issue, as opposed to, to viewing it in some other way. So maturity comes into to play as well. I was thinking as Attorney Mumford was speaking just a few minutes ago in terms of some of the experiences, and you mentioned that you had a nephew who devastated by being called the N-word by a young kid, and whether or not racism is something that is taught versus just a part of the individual. My father once told us a story of when he was growing up. They were on a plantation, and he was a kid, and the plantation owners and other workers there had children, and all the children interacted and they played together. Okay, white and black. They were just kids having fun. And he said that he found it kind of interesting that this one particular Caucasian kid that they grew up with, when he turned 16, he wanted them to start calling him Mr. as opposed to, just by the first name. He was now Mr. George or Mr. Brown or whatever the name may have been. And I just found that so interesting, but it really is telling in terms of what kind of things are being taught in households at the dinner table or whatever, as opposed to what is just there, genetically there and hereditarily there in the individual. So I truly think racism is something that's taught and it's reinforced as opposed to simply being there. And you can watch kids interact with one another. They play, they eat after one another, whatever the case may be, drink after one another. And they never have any thought about the color of the other child that they're interacting with. It's not until some adult makes a distinction and begins to, teach these racial differences that the child starts to take on that kind of belief.
Yes. I want to interrupt or pause really quick to bring on our other two guests. We have joining us now Pastor Willie Tobias, who is with the pastor at Mount. I'm sorry, let me get that correct. He's the pastor at New Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. And also joining us is Dr. Terrence Ware of Terrence Ware Dentistry. They should be coming in now. Welcome, guys.
Hey, what's going on?
Nothing much. I'll let Kamesha introduce you. She was so excited to do so.
Well, I guess first I need to excuse Gerald. He has to get to his baseball duties. We have a game tonight, so everybody wish Garrison his best tonight at the baseball game. I joined a little bit later. But it gives me a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Terrence Ware. I have known him for a very, very long time because he happens to be married to my fabulous best friend, Miss Andrea Ware. They are the parents of 2 children, Mia, who is 16.
Yeah, that's correct.
And Terrence Jacob, who is about to turn 7 in a couple of months. Yeah. They are very impressive parents. I've always been so proud, especially of little Mia, who we were very young when she was born, but she is an outstanding teenager. And I'm just so happy that Terrence agreed to join us. Pastor Tobias is also one of those fathers who I'm proud to know and call a friend. Is he on yet?
Yes, he's here.
Pastor Tobias is pastor of New Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church here in Jackson. He's married to Miss Monica Tobias, who's also a good friend of mine. And he's doing some great things in the community, and I'm so happy that he also agreed to join us today.
I think he had to log out really quick. I think he called in on the wrong number or something. So he's probably going to join us in a little bit. But Dr. Ware, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I guess we'll ask you a couple of questions that we've already talked about with Dr. Glenn and with Attorney Mumford, who just had to leave to go to Garrison's baseball game. One of the things we talked about already was, raising Black kids. And in what ways do you see your parenting style different from your dad's or your parents? Oh, there's Dr. Tobias.
And so I just let him just be. They're kids, especially like with COVID and all this kind of stuff. Even before then, I just let them be kids. I don't try to push them too much to do anything. Stuff they want to do, I provide the avenue for them to do it. Stuff that they have to learn how to do, like swimming and stuff like that. You got to learn how to do that because it's just, that's support. It's the support in your life. So you got to learn how to do that. But most of the time, I think I'm a pretty chill dad when it comes to that. And my dad never raised his voice. I'll fuss sometimes. My dad really never raised his voice because he had a belt, and his belt worked really well. I don't use mine as much, so I had to say more. He didn't have to say much because we knew what was coming behind it talking. If you didn't do whatever he said right then, you had a problem coming. So I have to repeat myself a little bit more than he did. But I mean, I'm trying to reach my dad's status as being a good dad. I think I do pretty well. But if I was like, I tell my dad all the time, if I'm a third of the dad he was to me, then I'll be satisfied.
Oh, wow. That's very complimentary, I'm sure. Pastor Tobias?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, so much for allowing me to participate in this conversation. Excuse my tardiness as well. I was rushing, trying to finish up a class. Good to see my brother, Terrence, on here as well. But as it relates to my parenting style, I am exactly like my dad. God rest his soul. My dad transitioned February of this year. He passed and went on to be with the Lord. But I too am like Terrence. My father was a Baptist pastor for over 45 years. So grew up in the church, attended church every Sunday, midweek service. And basically that has a lot to do with who I am today. I've been blessed to have 3 children. And as it relates to my parenting style, I was afraid of my father because what my father said was gold. I mean, you didn't talk back. There was no walking off, stumping your feet, shaking your head, none of that. I mean, if you did that, you might as well consider yourself getting ready to go to the hospital. Yes. So I had that level of respect for my dad. As far as my children, I am more relaxed with them. Example being with my daughters, we literally talk about anything. And I probably talk more to my daughter about what's going on with her and her body than her mom does. And I appreciate that. And I purposely do things like that because I want to make sure that my children are absolutely comfortable talking with me or talking to me about anything. I did not have that privilege with my dad. I'm 45 years old. As I stated earlier, he's transitioned and we get to have the talk. And, when I look back on how I was raised, that is one of the things that kind of bothered me about our relationship. Those sensitive conversations, those sensitive subjects, as it relates to maturing as a young boy, we did not have those conversations. The conversations about dating, we had very little conversation about that. So I purposely make sure that I have those sensitive conversations with my daughters as well as my son because I want them to feel comfortable to talk to me about any and everything. As of now, that has been the case, and I'm proud of that. I disciplined them, not like my parents or my father did. They stuck to that scripture, spare the rod, spoil the child. So I don't necessarily spank or whoop them as my parents did, but they know that there are some serious consequences to them being disobedient or stepping out of line based on how I have been doing it as of now. Knock on wood, thanks be to God. They have been doing well in school. Daughter made a 30 on the ACT, getting ready to go into her senior school. My baby girl is doing extremely well. So, and I contribute all that to how my father and my mother raised me.
Well, that's impressive. Congratulations to your daughter. And Dr. Ware, your daughter is doing some great things, even as a high schooler. She has a podcast, and we have to get her on. And maybe need to get some tips from her, too. That's
I need to get some tips, too, from her. I get some tips, too.
Okay.
Like, whoa, how did you think of that? What did you say now? What? She's so great with words. Like, she has a mastery of the language. It's uncanny. Like, seriously.
She can switch it over, man, and she'll just go into it. He was like, hold on, man. Where did this child come from? I had to ask her mom sometimes. Like, what? She definitely didn't get that from me. But she can use that language, and she's so smart. I mean, like, seriously, this child is so smart. I bought her some, like, equipment, some studio equipment, and she came out of the room with a podcast. That's exactly how it happened.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Okay.
Really amazing, too. You know, we kind of started talking about these studies, the perception that Black fathers are not involved, but all 4 of our guests had fathers that were very involved in their lives. And we can see just from this conversation right now, they are all very involved in the lives of their children.
Yeah.
It totally goes against what we see on TV shows and movies or social media. How do y'all think that those things impact how Black families are really viewed? Because when we see movies or even sometimes in commercials, you know, and I notice these little things, you'll see the Black mom is just there with her 2 little kids, but in a commercial that features a white parent, there's 2 parents. How do you think that affects the perception of the impact that Black fathers have on the lives of their children and their involvement?
I think the the perception that media portrays of African American males in general, as well as the quote unquote absence of fatherhood, is certainly detrimental to what I think really happens in African American families. I mean, I grew up relatively small town, Cleveland, Mississippi, but I don't really remember any of my friends not having a dad around. You know, I mean, they were there. They were always involved. We played football or baseball or basketball, whatever was going on. There were dads around. I mean, you know, and you looked forward to their commentaries taking place in the bleachers and things of that sort. Clearly, there have been some positive Black images of fathers on television. The Cosby Show, regardless of what you might think of Mr. Cosby, the Cosby Show was a very positive image show. Even going further back with Good Times, for instance, it was a show about hard times and hard knocks, and some of those things may have been a bit unrealistic. But the father was there. He was a part of their life daily, and he was actively trying to provide for his family despite the challenges that he was facing in society to do that. So, there are positive images that clearly have been there, but there certainly are a number of negative images as well. If I might take just another moment to point out one in particular. I don't remember the names of these individuals, but you all may recall last year to a year and a half ago, there were 2 males who were in the news. One was a white male who had killed his family, and another was a Black male who had killed someone protecting his family. Okay. And when they were portrayed on the media, national news, etc., the Caucasian who had killed his own family was shown with this picture where he was like at a resort with his family, and they were all having fun and loving on one another. Whereas the Black man who shot somebody as he was protecting his family from this aggressor, he was shown in handcuffs and in the, that prison orange attire that they tend to dress them out in. Now, when you think about the issues at hand there and what was happening, the Black man was doing the honorable thing. He was actually trying to protect his family, but he's portrayed in the media in a negative way. And I'm telling you, those images, they find their place in our brains, and they help us shape, our attitudes and our perceptions about people as well. So, I think the media plays a major role in the images and the perception that individuals develop about African American males.
Dr. Ware or Pastor Tobias, would y'all like that?
To piggyback on what Doc was saying there, it was absolutely true. So like I grew up in Indianola, another small town in the Delta, in the 80s and 90s. And just about everybody I knew had their dad in the house. I really don't remember many families that did not have a father in the house. If they did not have a father in the house, there was always uncles around, always, extended family. Even people that you would consider, people say that, it may be poor people or rich. It really didn't matter the socioeconomics of the families. There were always dads around. So that's something that I just didn't see coming up. I can't say that other people have a different reality, but from where I'm from and where I sit, I don't really see that much. I have a group of friends. Of course, I'm graduated from Mississippi School of Math and Science. I went to Tougaloo Gentry. So I've been around a bunch of different people, and just about all the men I know take care of their kids. So I don't know where this image comes from. Also, again, what he was saying about what were you saying about? Oh, imagery. Yeah, imagery. So imagery is everything, right? So that's if you look on television, you look on Facebook, you look everywhere. Everything's about advertising, right? So people, every company spends billions of dollars every year on advertising. So we obviously know because of that imagery is important. So I don't know what reason they have to paint us the way they do. Maybe so they can do us like they do us and take from us what they take from us. But it is absolutely true that images play a big difference in how we're perceived in the world.
Pastor Tobias?
Yeah, I agree with my brothers. I believe that the media does a horrible job of portraying African American males. I just believe that because I agree with our brothers. Most of the friends I had, if their father was not at home, they had a grandparent or they had someone who was in. Come to the ball game, come to the football game to support them or what have you. But I also think that, we already have so many things against us that if you have a black male who wears an earring, he's already placed in a category of being no good, being a thug. He has a tattoo. So things of that nature, I think, contribute to the idea that men are attached to being no good or not hardworking or not having a love for their family. But I just believe in my heart that most men, not all of them, but most men, I think, want to take care of their children and want to be able to provide for their families. I just believe that because there's something God created within us to do those things. So, you have a few that fall in that bad group or category, but I just believe that the average man wants to be there to be a blessing to their children.
Absolutely. I think we all believe that too, Pastor. We don't have a whole lot of time, and so I would like for you all to keep your comments pretty short, but I want to hear from all of you all about, Terrence mentioned Emmett Till, which is something that many of us all know about and what that did and how it changed the conversations with not just Black people, I think people all around the world. So going from Emmett Till to Trayvon Martin to now George Floyd or Rayshard Brooks, where do we go from here? What is it that you and I know you've had these conversations with your family, with friends. Where do you see us going from here?
Go ahead, Buckley.
In regards to where we go from here, as I mentioned earlier, I do think that there's a reason to have some cautious optimism, given the fact that we are seeing worldwide, multi-ethnic involvement in a calling for justice, for fairness, for equality and equity. Individuals that you would not expect to emphasize that Black Lives Matter are actually doing so. So that's encouraging. And as I say, I'm cautiously encouraged because we have seen in the past enthusiasm that seemingly dissipated quite quickly, i.e., after President Obama was elected. So I'm cautious in regards to what we're seeing at this point, but I do think that there is something different happening in the world at this point, and hopefully because everyone's eyes have been open to these injustices, there will be a righting of wrongs in regards to laws that are on the books, and a righting of wrongs in regards to individuals who are placed in these positions of authority, such as police officers, better screening, better training of these individuals, so that there are few of these kind of situations that take place in the future.
Anyone else really quickly? Okay.
Well, I am cautiously optimistic, but it's hard to, because, like I said, my dad's generation went through the same thing, and we live in such a microwave society that it's hard to tell how the mood goes from minute to minute, because everybody, is on Facebook, Twitter, wherever, and so your mood changes with the new information. So I don't know. We'll see. I think the biggest thing we need to do is get rid of some of the elected officials that we have. I think we all know who I'm talking about. And we need to make sure that people that's out there marching and whatever, make sure they're signing up to be voting, and make sure we're making some real moves and holding our people accountable that are in office.
Holding down about not just
and somebody's in charge, and we need to hold whoever's in charge, hold them accountable. And we cannot have these police doing the same thing to my kids' generation and getting away with it. So we'll just see how it goes. I'm gonna pray about it, and we're gonna do it the best we can.
All right, Pastor Tobias, any last minute remarks?
Last two things that I want to share. I think where we go from here involves two things: education and participation. And I say that with all seriousness, because some way, somehow, we have to educate our people and our children that voting causes a change. But then, when we have that education, we can fill some of these positions in order to cause that change to occur. That's where that's what I'm teaching and telling our people: education and participation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for joining us. We are right at the 1 hour mark for our show, and I want to thank you all so much for joining us. I also would like to wish you all a happy Father's Day. Yeah, I would be remiss if I do not mention my own dad, Willie James Kennedy Jr., and wish him a happy Father's Day as well. I heard y'all talk about your dads, and I know Kamesha definitely wants to talk about hers. But, when y'all were talking about your dads and your upbringing, I definitely thought of mine and what my upbringing was like, if I had a few words to just describe my dad, it would definitely be a man of strength, a provider, someone who was very, very supportive of me. And I guess I have him a little bit wrapped around my finger, even still at this age, I guess being his only daughter. So I'm excited about seeing him this weekend. And Kamesha?
Oh, yes. I absolutely have to wish my Papa Bear, Mr. Reverend Sammy Brown in Canton, Mississippi, a happy Father's Day. I am the ultimate daddy's girl, and now I have a daddy's girl, and I am very sorry to my mother for all of the years of my taking away her husband, because now Gia has taken away mine. I think there is something when a woman is well loved by her father. She can make some good decisions about her mate, i.e. Gerald Mumford. That's how he came to be. Sammy Brown put that thing in motion. So happy Father's Day, Daddy. I love you so much. I know you're going to figure out how to watch this between now and Sunday.
Mine too. Mine too. Y'all, thank y'all so much for joining us. Again, you can share with your friends and family. They can watch this again or listen to it on the womenforprogressradio.com. They also can find this video on the Facebook page, Women for Progress Facebook page. It also is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, as well as Spreaker. radio app too. So thank you all and Spotify too. So thank you all so much for joining us and taking time out your day. We hope y'all have, again, a great, happy Father's Day weekend. And we are signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you.
But noise, man. Can you go sit down somewhere? Can you stop? And so I just let them just be. They're kids, especially like with COVID and all this kind of stuff. Even before then, I just let them be kids. I don't try to push them too much to do anything. Stuff they want to do, I provide the avenue for them to do it. Stuff that they have to learn how to do, like swimming and stuff like that. You got to learn how to do that because it's just, that's support. It's the support in your life. So you got to learn how to do that. But most of the time, because they go get your dad when it comes to that. And my dad never raised his voice. I fuss sometimes. My dad really never raised his voice because he had a belt, and his belt worked really well. I don't use mine as much. So he was coming behind the talking. If you didn't do whatever he said right then, you had a problem coming. So I have to repeat myself a little bit more than he did. But I mean, I'm trying to reach my dad's status as being a good dad. I think I do pretty well. But if I was like, I tell my dad all the time, if I'm a third of the dad he was to me, then I'll be satisfied.
Oh, wow. That's very complimentary, I'm sure. Pastor Tobias?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, so much for allowing me to participate in this conversation. Excuse my tardiness as well. I was rushing, trying to finish up a class. Good to see my brother, Terrence, on here as well. But as it relates to my parenting style, I am exactly like my dad. God rest his soul. My dad transitioned February of this year. He passed and went on to be with the Lord. But I too am like Terrence. My father was a Baptist pastor for over 45 years. So grew up in the church, attended church every Sunday, midweek service. And basically that has a lot to do with who I am today. I've been blessed to have 3 children. And as it relates to my parenting style, I was afraid of my father because what my father said was gold. I mean, you didn't talk back. There was no walking off, stumping your feet, shaking your head, none of that. I mean, if you did that, you might as well consider yourself getting ready to go to the hospital. Yes. So I had that level of respect for my dad. As far as my children, I am more relaxed with them. Example being with my daughters, we literally talk about anything. And I probably talk more to my daughter about what's going on with her and her body than her mom does. And I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that I